Hello. Welcome back, non-binary friends, and everyone else. It's Halloween again, that deeply spooky time of year. A time for frights, a time for chills, more than anything else. A time for have some takeaway and beer, watch bad movies with your pals. I've been a bad movie lover since high school, and my friend Georgia would buy kung fu and horror movies in 4-movie bargain sets from Poundland. Yeah, 4 movies for £1, 25p per film, and really much, much more than they were worth. Georgia and Ash and I would get together and watch 2 or 3 terrible films back to back, and just sit there transfixed and unable to escape for hours and hours. I've seen dozens and dozens of films now, not expecting them to be good, not expecting them to be competent, not even necessarily expecting them to be entertaining. Because that's the thing about watching trash movies. You don't really spend the most of your time laughing uproariously at the unintentional comedy. You spend most of your time deathly bored. Some movies don't get better, or really have any good bits, and you just get to the end and you feel like you've eaten a cold, greasy meal that costs too much. And for that to be worth it, the gold, the good bits that you do find, must be really compelling. So after a decade of Chinese takeaway and bad movie nights, of riff tracks, of slowly discovering the whole community of people who want to painfully subject themselves to just awful movies, I think it's time to finally ask, what the fuck? The Room was written, directed, and produced by Tommy Wiseau in... Do you think this is Amateur Hour? We're not going to talk about the fucking Room. We're going to talk about some fucking bad movies. Some movies that'll convince you that The Room deserves a fucking Oscar. Neil Breen is a filmmaker who, after Wiseau, is probably the most well-known and most watched in the world of so bad it's good cinema.
I can't go on with this! I can't go on with this! I'm an American! I'm an American! I love this country!
YouTuber Adam Johnston of Your Movie Sucks made a video shining a light on Breen after his 3rd film, Fateful Findings. Even at that time, Adam could see clearly and pointed out that Neil Breen's first film, Double Down, and 3rd film, Fateful Findings, were almost exactly the same plot. Breen plays an amazing hacker and genius who's also the bad guy, and also maybe a cyborg, who exposes the corruption of the ruling class with his amazing hacking and/or assassinations. Adam couldn't have known then that Breen's 4th film would be nearly identical to his 2nd, or that his 5th film would have almost exactly the same premise as his 1st and 3rd. If I had to bet, I would say that when Breen's 6th film comes out, it will feature him playing, as he does in his 2nd and 4th films, an omnipotent, non-human savior entity sent to evaluate the sins and deeds of mankind, who then kills a bunch of people and leaves. I'm very confident in this guess. The worst thing about Breen's bizarre savior complex is that somehow he's winning. We all get to the end of his movies and we're just chanting his name as it appears 24 times in the end credits.
Neil Breen, 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 Neil Breen.
Breen is a really interesting case to look at because he's an example of a few running themes in bad filmland. First off, his films are so fucking boring. Secondly, Breen communicates his political views in a similar way to a lot of trash cinema directors. That is to say, badly. Pretty much independent of what the political views are they're trying to communicate, the communication itself is almost always impressively terrible. It's either about as subtle as a birthday cake full of snakes, or just baffling. Or sometimes, even better, it's both. In Double Down, Neil Breen is the protagonist of the film as well as the antagonist, and that was so confusingly communicated I just had to have it told to me by a friend. So, here's the thing. He hacks corrupt politicians and exposes their crimes, but also holds the world hostage with bioterrorism. And I'm just not sure what the film wants us to think about exposing corruption. Is it bad? Is it good? Is it bad because bad guy cyborg Neil Breen does it? Or does bad guy cyborg Breen doing it make us think he's less bad than we thought? At the start and end of Brett McCormick's Replicator, a film about a machine that turns people into smoking hot babes until they achieve climax, at which point they turn into deadly gator people who can turn other people into zombies by biting them. Yes, there is a newspaper with a headline that reads, US Army infiltrated by transsexuals. So what is Replicator trying to say about trans people? Are they smoking hot babes who turn into lizard people when they come, and then can turn men into their zombie minions? Is that what Replicator is trying to say? Is that the message of Replicator? Even when these films have good intentions behind them, you'll be really hard-pressed to find one that communicates a clear, positive political message. Neil Breen sure seems to hate corruption in the government, but his solution to this, invariably, is for lots and lots and lots of people to die. Is this what he actually wants to happen? Who knows?
Pass Through, a Neil Breen film. Artificial intelligence from far into the future arrives to immediately cleanse the human species of millions of humans who are harmful to other humans. A visionary, revolutionary film which pushes the human species to the limits of controversial, thought-provoking actions.
Another running theme that's common to Neil Breen's works, and The Room, and Replicator, and more, is the self-insert character. In these films, the director, who's usually also the writer, will have put themselves in as a cool hero character of some kind. A savior, or action man, or innocent victim betrayed by the world. Or failing that, just someone who gets to touch boobs. The exploration of trash cinema is often the exploration of the wild characters behind the movies. And just as you can't say The Room without Tommy Wiseau, and you can't say
I can't believe you committed suicide
without Neil Breen, you really can't say Ninja without Godfrey Ho.
Your technique is still very good. You want the Golden Ninja Warrior all for yourself.
Why are you so greedy?
Because there's not enough for everyone. Gordon's a real bastard. I'll give him a lesson next time.
We better finish his partner Ronald first.
Good idea. Tell, I'll arrange for Ronald to go to the barber shop. My man Fox will do the rest. William, ever kill anyone?
Ronald, you're kidding me. Killing people is against the law. I've never killed anyone in my life.
Ho has made an immense amount of media, at least dozens, if not hundreds of films, and over half of them have ninja in the title. How can any filmmaker be this prolific, you ask? And the answer is, of course, flagrant, shameless plagiarism. See, Godfrey Ho's preferred method of constructing a film is to shoot just about enough footage for half a feature length, and then steal, and I mean steal, the footage from a relatively unknown film, an unreleased project, or a foreign cinema piece, and dub over the footage and edit together to imply a link between these stories. For example, in Ninja Terminator, there's a scene where one character gets a phone call, and that's really all that ties together the narrative threads.
Can I speak to Harry McQueen, please?
Yeah, speaking.
He's so defined by plagiarism, his studio's opening logo just uses a section from the Star Wars soundtrack. Godfrey, did you think no one would notice? It's Star Wars, Godfrey! But wait, there's a twist.
In part because of his horrific plagiarism, and in part because he was working in secret with his main business partner's competitor, Godfrey Ho released an enormous amount under fake names. Tim Ashby, Duncan Bauer, Leo Beckman, Andy Berlin, Dwight Bollinger, Bob Chan, Wallace Chan, Willis Chan, Patrick Chase, Alton Chung, Tommy Chung, Glenn Clegg, Daniel Clow, Eric Coleman, Hans Coltman, Robert Edison, Ralph Fillmore, Philip Fraser, George Hurst, Larry Hutton, Edgar Gia, Carmel Johnson, Robert Johnson, Gary Kay, Benny Kung, Ho Chi Kung,
Antonin Gasner, Bob Green, Martin Greenfield, Benny Ho, Jeffrey Ho, Raymond Ho,
Benjamin King, Ted Kingsbrook, Robert Lamb, Chris Lamb, Herbert Lamb, York Lamb, Bruce Lambert, Charles Lee, George Lee, Henry Lee, Martin Lee, Frank Lewis, Joe Livingston, Rogar Markham, Anthony Parr, Bert Peterson, Jerry Sawyer, Victor Sears, John Shaw,
and Kurt Spielberg.
And that's not even a full list. That was about half of his known pseudonyms. And then there's what my friends and I call him, which is of course just Goho. What's magical about Goho having so many fake names, and possibly more because he can't remember all the ones he used, is that you can just happen across one of his films. You can be watching something that you'll think will just be fun, dumb, schlocky garbage, and directed by Godfrey Hall will appear, and you'll just have that feeling. Does that person really exist? Is that just Godfrey Ho? Does that person exist, but Godfrey Ho is using their name? Who knows? All the fun of being a conspiracy theorist without any of the turning out to be a massive anti-Semite. Goho made about 10 films a year for nearly a decade. That's just incredible productivity. That's like an averagely productive YouTuber. It's an incredible backlog to work through. We've seen so many of his films now, they've just become a part of our daily life. We can barely see someone in a raincoat without saying,
Gordon's a real bastard.
Those are my evil plans, and then we'll smuggle the drugs.
Yes, very good.
Yes? Curio? Yes, I understand. Curio's a bastard. Let's kill him.
Let's kill him.
Ha 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 ha, oh Yoshi, ha 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 ha. Yoshi is my son. I'll tweet that later.
There's a draw in Goho's work that really shouldn't be understated. That it's fucking cool. This is really worth looking at because a lot of shitty films you'll watch will be bad along the axes of filming, writing, direction, or other things, but they'll have really solid action, comedy, practical effects, or just their general aesthetics. Ho's fight scenes are undeniably impressively choreographed, and while he certainly exists in a ninja niche, that isn't inherently bad. Ninja are something a bit like Godzilla or Jaws, where the conventional wisdom might be to show the thing as little as possible for maximum effect. But is the conventional wisdom right? Or does it objectively own to see three ninja fight to the death over the golden ninja warrior statue that will grant them invulnerability and control over the ninja empire? I have my answer! Whatever else trash cinema does, it's certainly capable of showing you, in technical cinematic terms here, the coolest fucking thing you ever saw in your life.
Where the hell did that snake come from?
Would you believe up through the toilet?
Just when you thought it was safe to take a pee.
There's a ritualistic feel to watching bad movies. Almost invariably after the movie ends, people will look around the room in amazement and bafflement at what they just saw, and then try and piece it together, usually by telling each other the plot of the film. But everyone has a different version, because it was so confusing. These films create a Rashomon effect just because they're so weird. You're probably familiar with that cognitive psychology experiment from 1999 to do with selective attention, where participants were shown a video and asked to count how many times a ball was thrown between the people, and then asked if they spotted the gorilla that just walked through the shot. Godfrey Ho films are like 2 hours of that gorilla video. The first time I watched Revenge of the Drunken Master, and after a series of inexplicable, bizarre events, the end just appears in bold caps, Georgia and I looked at each other and just burst into howling, screaming, crying laughter for like 2 or 3 solid minutes until her dad came downstairs to check on us to see if we were alright. Yeah, Revenge of the Drunken Master is a Godfrey Ho film that has nothing to do with the Jackie Chan classic Drunken Master. It's probably one of Ho's best works. It stars Johnny Chan. There's a rich tradition of trash cinema being created as an attempt to capitalize off the name recognition of bigger movies. You probably know Dawn of the Dead, but did you know Dawn of the Dead was recut for Italian audiences as Zombie? And did you know that Italian copyright laws at the time pretty much let you make whatever fucking movie you want and call it the sequel to any movie that ever existed? Because that's how you get Zombie 2 and Zombie 3. Of course, in the UK it had to have a different name because you can't just pretend these are Dawn of the Dead sequels, and that's why in the UK these films are known as Zombie Flesh Eaters 1 and 2. But sometime later the UK decided unrelated sequels were fine, I guess, because that's why an unrelated film called After Death got re-released as Zombie Flesh Eaters 3. And in America, where Dawn of the Dead was actually made, you definitely couldn't pretend that these were just sequels to that. So Italian Zombie 2 became Zombie. Zombie 3 became Zombie 3, just to be helpful. Zombie Flesh Eaters 3, aka After Death, became Zombie 4 After Death. And in the ultimate power move, the American release added Zombie 5, which was an unrelated film where the original Nazi zombies had been swapped out for birds, and so was Zombie 5 killing birds. But for the truly ultimate experience, you need to get the Eddie Entertainment release of the Zombie series, because that's where the real galaxy brain stuff comes in. There's Zombie 1, which is Italian Zombie 2. Zombie 2, surprise, it's Zombie 2 again, they released the same film twice in the series. Zombie 3, which is an Italian Zombie 3, but not the Zombie 3 I mentioned earlier, put a pin in that. Zombie 4, which is a film called A Virgin Among the Living Dead. Okay. Zombie 5, which is a different film by the same director as the previous. Zombie 6, which is actually Anthropophagus 2, totally unrelated. And Zombie 7, which is actually Anthropophagus 1. But before you worry about that too much, don't worry, Anthropophagus 2 is not a real sequel to Anthropophagus 1. It's just another film by the same director.
I'll put a fly in their soup. I have all the odds on my side. This is one game. They're gonna lose.
Now take that pin out and let me just say there may be more films sharing the title Zombie 3 than there are Spider-Man films. Or maybe even Marvel films. Or maybe just films. Is this Zombie 3? Is this Zombie 3 right now? For my money, the best Zombie 3 is the Zombie 3 alternately titled Nightmare City, in which zombies pour off a plane and slowly overrun an entire city, but then it all turns out to have just been a dream. But then the guy wakes up and the dream starts coming true anyway. Magic. None of these films are particularly highbrow art, and they don't really carry forward the spirit of George Romero Jr.'s original films. But if you're looking for a scene where a zombie fights a shark, I don't know where else you're gonna get it. Let's just say it up front. Most bad on purpose movies suck. When sequels to massive cult hits from trash cinema get crowdfunded, they usually try way too hard to recapture the magic of the original. And when big companies like Netflix try to put out stuff that feels like it might be trying to be bad on purpose, it feels like... well, it feels exactly like the first time you saw that Pepsi ad. I was planning to talk about Funhouse Massacre here, but I'm just getting less and less sure that was actually a bad on purpose film. Did that movie just suck? The point is, bad on purpose is, for the most part, a pipe dream. Pie in the sky. You can't force bad movies. They have to come to you. You can't make them. Unless you're Jim motherfucking Jarmusch, in which case you can, apparently. The Dead Don't Die 2019 horror comedy by Jim Jarmusch starring Bill Murray, Tilda Swinton, and my husband is a bad movie done on purpose, and done really well. It reuses shots, the narrative and dialogue are ridiculous, and some of the performances are stiff to the point that you have to know it's deliberate. And best of all, the movie ends with an actual, honest-to-God speech from a moralizing loner outsider, and practically everyone else who saw it hated it. The other people walking out of the theatre hated it, the other people I know who saw it hated it, but it's really, really good. In the longer version of this video on Patreon, I'm gonna put a big, old, long analysis of The Dead Don't Die, because I love that movie. So, if you want to see that, go give me $2 on Patreon for my thoughts about The Dead Don't Die. You're already welcome. So, let's talk about audience responsibility. Yes, I tricked you. I made you think this is going to be a video about Neil Breen, and now I'm going to talk about my media nerd shit. Ha! It can be appealing with the inherent comedy of trash films, with the garbage themes and politics that completely reject analysis, to assume that these movies require by definition a passive viewing experience, that you just have to sit there and let Neil Breen happen to you. You just have to enjoy the Breen experience, just go ho with the flow ho. However, the thing The Dead Don't Die taught me more than anything else is that an audience has to do work to make a bad movie fun to watch. And I think that's something that kind of runs counter to a basic assumption a lot of people make in media analysis, that an audience has no responsibility at all for their experience. The general assumption is that when somebody makes something, all responsibility rests with them for how well it goes down with their audience. And I think that's patently untrue to anyone who's ever seen a YouTube comments section. We've all seen it, folks. They comment and tell you that you should have done the thing, but you did do the thing. Or they comment and tell you that you shouldn't have done that other thing, but you didn't. It's not in the video. You're just angry and confused. Really, it's a lot like watching a Neil Breen film.
I'm so confused and depressed.
And that's probably why most bad on purpose movies are big, stinky, and not fun to watch at all, and why The Dead Don't Die is so good. Because to make your movie bad on purpose, you have to achieve a level of subtlety that makes the bad things like Easter eggs, like things that the audience figured out for themselves, to recreate the joy of finding these films. When Georgia Natalie Ash and I went to see Tommy Wiseau's new film, Best Friends, get it? It's like friends, it's also like fiends. We were obviously nervous that it would be a boring bad on purpose film that tried to force Tommy Wiseau's weirdness out, but it turned out he'd been cast in the perfect role to capture his strangeness without making it too gimmicky. He was playing himself. In my opinion, nobody at all should bother seeing The Disaster Artist, because Best Friends, released at the same time, is the far superior telling of the making of The Room. Sure, in Best Friends, Tommy and Greg aren't making a film called The Room. They're stealing gold off dead bodies in Tommy's funeral parlor and selling it to a fence in a very obviously Breaking Bad inspired storyline, and there are loads of other really weird, exaggerated, or otherwise reworked elements, but it's just the superior story. Back to our anxieties. The movie was directed by someone whose usual gig is music videos, and it shows. The first few minutes of the film are a wordless, chic narrative of Greg Sestero as a homeless man in LA trying to beg spare change, who notices Tommy Wiseau in his pearly hearse and follows him back to his funeral parlor. At this point, several minutes in, with all the nervous giggling out of the way, I think it's fair to say the whole audience was thinking the same thing. Is this just gonna be fine? Is it gonna be good? What's happening? But then, Tommy Wiseau delivered the first line of the film flawlessly.
Are you going to stand out there like a Statue of Liberty?
And then the entire audience erupted, screaming and crying and howling and looking at each other for answers that nobody had. Tommy had saved us. It was going to be okay. Tommy was at that screening. He gave an introduction and a Q&A with Greg Sestero and the director of Best Friends, and there was a meet and greet afterwards. And obviously, I know what you all want to know, so here goes. Tommy Wiseau in person is very energetic and a little scary and an utter cartoon character, and also somehow the realest person in the world. There's this Samsung Galaxy Gear ad.
Movie's about to start.
Okay, I'll just be 1 second. There's this Samsung Galaxy Gear ad that's stuck in my head for like the last 6 years.
You want to see something cool?
Yeah, sure.
Here, give me your number. Say it.
Okay, it's 543 677.
12. Oh my god! Oh my god! I'll be right there.
There was perfect, Jack.
Are you geared up?
I saw it because it was bad and people were sharing it around because it sucks, and I first saw it when I was working in the marketing industry. Something that strikes me when I think back about it now is it's funny because you know how ads work. And that's not how ads work. Like, you know that ads are supposed to create a sense of aspiration and a need for a product, and that this just super duper ain't it. The ad tries to make out the guy who has the smartwatch as this smooth-talking Chad, and the guy with the phone as the pathetic loser, even though the girl also has a phone. And also, it's 2013, nobody has a smartwatch, everybody has phones. Are you just trying to insult people? What the heck? It would be so easy to do this right. You could just have someone dancing to a song lots of people like and it would sell. Just do the scene from Flashdance. I think it's interesting looking back that this was being shared around people who knew advertising and could see a million better ways of doing this that doesn't involve painful blow-by-blow scenarios showing that smartwatch are great and good and phone are dumb and bad. Like, literally an incel Chad meme would have been an actual better ad for the smartwatch than this. I think it's interesting because of that drive to point and say, they're doing it bad. In Michel Foucault's Archaeology of Knowledge, yes, Foucault lays out a discursive perspective on history, one where instead of looking at great men discovering uncharted territory and achieving feats of daring do, instead we understand that since the dawn of time people have been arguing about shit in what he'd call discursive communities. A discursive community is drawn together by discussion, so there's a group of people and then a topic that unites them, like Star Wars fans and Star Wars, or my friends and never being able to shut the fuck up about Louise. Certain communities, though, only discuss things in a particular way, and we could call these groups communities of derision. Bad movie fans would definitely be one. Most of online political discussion works this way. We look at the other people with the bad opinions, and we draw a derisive pleasure from knowing they're doing it wrong. I'm not trying to be any kind of centrist by saying that every group operates this way, it's just factually how people do. The atheists look at the creationists and laugh, the skeptics look at the SJWs and laugh, the SJWs look at the manosphere and laugh, but without using any homophobia or racial slurs or misogyny. So really there is one clear winner, isn't there? When Chapo Trap House do a reading series and highlight political articles from shitty conservatives, like one of their most popular episodes, Rod Dreher's The Exorcist, the comparison to bad movie audiences becomes incredibly clear.
This is all a preamble to where this story is actually going. This is like the prologue to this post.
Cool.
He goes, well, I agree with Harrington that the occult boom is a sign of the times. What it signifies is another matter, I'd say. Now, that's a setup for me to tell you about a strange telephone call I received yesterday.
Oh, no.
What is this Grandpa Simpson-ass article? Where is it going?
Oh, no. Someone called up and offered me the Time Life books on the occult. I think it was Beelzebub.
Okay, guys, that's the background. This is all the preamble. Are you ready for this turn? Here's where he drops it.
Yeah! Are my pockets ready?
Nathan started his story with a jaw-dropping line. For the past year, my wife has been under the care of an exorcist.
Yes!
In my last video, I talked about Ben Shapiro's shitty novel, True Allegiance, and there's actually an overlap there, because... Wait, there isn't a movie of True Allegiance? Hollywood, I am begging you, get Zack Snyder to direct it. It'll be a fucking train wreck. I will see it in theaters 6 times. A lot of the online left is community of derision, and I think when you look at it through this lens, the comparison to trash cinema fans, it's pretty interesting. Of course, as I said before, the online right is doing the same to us, but for reasons that I don't care to get into right now, we're right and they're wrong. Just like with bad movies, we are fascinated by these characters who have horribly, horribly bad ideas. The ones we can look at and say, they're doing it wrong. But it's always the ones with more perceived power. Be it the power to make a film, the power to influence politics, or just more subscriber on YouTube. I think in this way, communities of derision prefer to punch up. Or at least do what they perceive as punching up. What else can we say about communities of derision? Well, like any discursive community, the benefits of discussing, analysing, and understanding something are fairly clear. I wouldn't be quick to say that they produce much, besides the occasional very good parody. The derision itself obviously provides a lot of joy to a lot of people. But I think that more than anything else, whatever else they do, it's important to see that they draw people together. Am I really saying that the real Godfrey Ho is the friends we made along the way? I guess I am. The real Godfrey Ho is the friends we made along the way. Happy Halloween! Shh.
Do you like smart little videos by people from New Zealand? I know you do, because you're watching this, so don't even try to fool me, you wily viewer, you. Anyway, you should check out Conquest of Dread for some really interesting videos with some of the most impressive visuals I've ever seen. Do you like video games? No? No? What do you have against video games? Shut up! And go follow Lots of Lottie on twitch.tv/lotsoflottie now. If you'd like to become a patron and see the longer version of this essay where I talk about my thoughts on The Dead Don't Die, hop over to patreon.com/CurioVids now and give me $2 or more than $2. I'd like to thank Baphometrics and Han the Man for making wonderful music for this channel, as well as Ralph Fillmore, Ted King, and Godfrey Hall for inspiring this essay, and Adam at YMS for exposing us all to Neil Breen, and especially for pointing out the disclaimer in Breen's credits. I'd also like to thank my patrons for making this all possible, and you, the viewer, for watching all the way to the spooky end. See you next time.